All right, so we got some pretty controversial video came out of Israel in the last 24 hours showing what appears to be evidence that a major United Nations aid organization at the very least had an idea of what Hamas was up to in the Gaza Strip. So we're going to talk about who that organization is, some recent accusations they've been facing, and walk through some of the footage that Israel put out. So I'm recording this at 6 a.m. Central on Sunday, February 11th, 2024. It's early, and I'm shaving because I got some Army stuff to do here pretty quickly, but I thought that this was a topic worth talking about. It's getting a lot of attention already, understandably so, and wanted to try to provide a little background, a little more detail around this. So as you see it pop up elsewhere, you've got a little background. So starting out, UNRWA stands for the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees in the Near East. It's an incredibly long-term name of an organization. UNRWA is what a lot of folks call it. So we're going to use that throughout the rest of this video here. UNRWA has long been accused by Israel of having some sort of connection with Hamas and other militant groups in Gaza. The reason for that at a very high level is the argument that if Hamas runs and controls Gaza, all aspects of Gaza, in order for any organization to function there, you have to at the very least abide by their terms. That could be not going in certain places or not talking about certain things once you leave or not taking pictures of this, that, or the other thing. So at a very high level, that is the kind of accusation thrown at UNRWA and other organizations that function in Gaza. However, since October 7th, since this most recent iteration of the wars kicked off, or the fighting's kicked off, there have been more severe allegations specifically tied to UNRWA employees taking part in those October 7th attacks. And actually, I think it's worth talking about that first before getting into the footage here. Those accusations, the intelligence has not yet been made public, but action has been taken on multiple fronts. So Felipe Lazzarini, the Commissioner General of UNRWA, and we're going to get more on him here in a second, he actually released these employees. The people that we have so far was that 9 of their employees were fired due to these allegations. 1 was already killed, and 2 others they were still trying to identify. They fired these individuals before conducting the investigation. So the investigation is underway right now. I think that speaks to the severity. My take from the outside looking in makes it seem like that evidence is pretty solid, but we still haven't seen it publicly, and that's worth noting. That intelligence, supposedly, they're calling it a dossier, has been shared with a bunch of countries around the world. That has led to 18 different countries suspending their funding of UNRWA. Not turning it off entirely, not trying to shut down UNRWA, but for the time being, 18 different countries have suspended their funding. Again, that intelligence has not been made public, but it's pretty significant. Enough so to where the UN, again, took action before conducting their own internal investigation. What we do have from that, because it sounds like Israel provided some snippets of that dossier to various news organizations. What we got out of that was that Israel said that 10 members of Hamas and an 11th was a member of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad. Specific accusations included that a school counselor from Khan Yunis abducted a woman from Israel in collaboration with his son, that a social worker distributed ammunition and coordinated vehicles during the attack, as well as assisted in bringing the dead body of an Israeli soldier to Gaza, and that an employee participated in a massacre that left 97 Israelis dead. It also said that Israeli intelligence had traced the movements of 6 of the employees inside of Israel through their cell phones. Others, according to Israel, had cell phone calls intercepted in which they discussed their participation in the attacks, while 3 others received text messages ordering them to muster points, including one who was ordered to bring rocket-propelled grenades that they had stored in their home. So these accusations are above and beyond the you have to be nice to Hamas in order to function in Gaza, or you can't speak out against Hamas. This is saying that some of these UNRWA employees took direct part in killing Israeli civilians and participating, facilitating that attack on October 7th. The scope of those allegations, again, is what led the United Nations to take action by firing those employees while their investigation is ongoing. I think that's some good background here for the videos we're about to see. But again, we have to mention that intelligence has not been made public, which is understandable for a lot of reasons. It's in the middle of a war, but we are taking the word of an intelligence dossier filtered through various news organizations. You have to know that aspect of this. So what we got here, and there's a great write-up put together by Manny Fabian that I'm going to use heavily for this. He said Israel was able to identify a subterranean data center, complete with an electrical room, industrial battery power packs, and living quarters that was built where Israel would not be able to target in an airstrike. At the time of the initial ground offensive in Gaza, the military had not found or known about this data center, but they gathered new intelligence through some interrogations of captured Hamas militants that helped them pinpoint where to dig. So this facility, this data center, was in the northern portion of Gaza, where Israel had already moved through in the last few months. Right, so we talk about how they've moved through and maybe killed a lot of the Hamas militants and secured some of these areas to a degree, but there was still an unknown around these tunnels. This is a great example. Israel moved through here, but didn't know that some of these tunnels were this deep underground, didn't know where to look, didn't know where to dig to find them. Now that they have time and Hamas has largely been moved out of that area, they move the appropriate equipment back in, start digging, and this is what they uncover. They said that IDF officials believe that Hamas used the server room for intelligence gathering, data processing, and communications. Hard drives and some of the computers were taken to be investigated before the tunnel system was demolished in a large explosion. I think there's still a little bit of a thought that insurgent and terrorist organizations are all manual. They're using paper. They're not sophisticated. That's not true. Even Islamic State, Al-Qaeda, Taliban, every one of these organizations around the world, they're on the internet. They're using modern communications to a degree, right? They're not as out in the open as state actors might necessarily be, but seeing that Hamas has a server farm, in a sense, should not be shocking at all. The media operations from any one of these organizations or the communications network that is needed to keep them afloat is significant. It just looks like Israel happened across one of these. They say, again, Manny says that the UNRWA server room, unlike the Hamas one, appeared to be mostly empty. One server cabinet was placed outside the room but had been stripped of all the computers. And in the videos we'll show here in a second, you can see how the UNRWA building in the server room, it looks like it's right above some of these tunnel networks, and it's possible that Hamas might have been trying to siphon off some of the power going to the UNRWA building because it takes a lot of power to keep all those servers functioning. According to an IDF officer, they say, quote, "There is no doubt that UNRWA staff knew that Hamas was digging a massive tunnel beneath them. There's a perimeter wall, a gate, cameras at the gate who log who comes in and out. Whoever worked at UNRWA knew very well who was coming in and who they were covering for." Adding, they cleared out all of the computers, all the DVRs, digital video recorders for surveillance cameras, cut most of the cables. This is the behavior of someone who has something to hide. So a couple notable points there. All of the recording footage is gone. That would be helpful here, wouldn't it? To see, is there footage of Hamas militants coming into the compound? It doesn't sound like right now there is video or there is a tunnel entrance inside of the UNRWA compound. It's just on the grounds and the tunnel runs underneath. One of the reasons for that is Israel is going to be much less likely to conduct a major strike on top of a United Nations building, right? So the tunnel is in a relatively secure area when it is underneath the UN headquarters in this case. So I thought this one was helpful here, showing kind of a map overlay of where some of these tunnels were identified. Again, still kind of waiting for the day. It's probably going to be a while when we see a total overlay of Gaza to just see how extensive these tunnel networks are. As mentioned before, Israel cleared through this area, moved through this area, was in firefights, probably lost soldiers in and around this building, and still did not know. They walked right over this tunnel complex, didn't even know it was there. In some cases, I think they said it was at least 8 meters below ground. So you can see they didn't necessarily find, when they found it, it wasn't that they found an entrance, they dug their own entrance. And you'll see as they move throughout this compound, they eventually find some of those entrances and exits and use those as well. Kind of the traditional Hamas tunnel here. Nothing too out of the ordinary yet. A lot more electrical wiring on the walls already than we've seen in some other tunnels. But not as fancy at this point. Just the other day we were walking through some, and this is where it changes. There's some of the tiling a little nicer, and some of the reports talked about this, how it was pretty rugged until you got into some of these server rooms, and then it was just, this is significant. This is when people were talking about what might be found under the Shifa hospital, and it was just some tunnels, and the people were thinking it was going to be a command and control center. That's what Israel was putting out. This is the kind of thing you would expect to see from a command and control center. So here we got a drone coming out of one of the tunnels to show the location of where one of these entrances are. think Israel's done a good job recently of recognizing they have to show the one-shot footage. There you go. Right next to the UNRWA compound, which is, we're going to talk about their response to this here in a second. And this is what I was mentioning a second ago, talking about how some of these cables coming down were severed. And it looks like some of those went straight down into the Hamas server room underground. The question of why this stuff wasn't removed could be a couple reasons there. One, do you see how these guys are moving through these tunnels? It doesn't look like there's an easy way to get those servers out of there anytime soon. And the second is, it's not clear how quickly Israel got on top of that location. Did those guys have to leave in a hurry? I would expect they did something to try to wipe those hard drives. They didn't just leave mass amounts of intelligence behind for Israel to conduct. But of course, we'll have to wait and see on that front. So in turning to responses here, the most significant one we have is from Felipe Lazzarini, the Commissioner General of UNRWA. He said UNRWA did not know what is under its headquarters in Gaza. UNRWA is a human development and humanitarian organization that does not have the military and security expertise, nor the capacity to undertake military inspections of what is or might be under its premises. So a couple things there. And worth noting, Hamas has not said anything at all, yes or no, denial, or anything. I'll let you know when they do put out something publicly on this front. So it is reasonable that UNRWA did not have significant ground-penetrating radar to identify what was 8 meters below their basement floor. You got to let them off the hook for that one. That is not what they're built for. That could be under any one of our houses, and we're not going to have the ability to confirm or deny that. It's the other aspects that you have to get at here. So the entrances and exits that are identified either on or right next to UNRWA facilities. Again, talking about the cameras and the gated areas, you have to address that part right there, right? That's a tough one to answer for. And then showing the wiring in some of those videos that is going from UNRWA down below ground to what? Well, below ground is this Hamas tunnel. It's not that big of a building. You got to be able to explain that kind of stuff. Why do you have massive amounts of tunnel and potentially power being siphoned off from your building to where? Where is that going? So we'll see. It sounds like Lazzarini is conducting an investigation. Maybe more information will come out of that, but there's a lot. I mean, I feel like to deny all of this from this one video requires some pretty significant blinders. It's hard to say at this point that UNRWA had no idea, like completely shocked. What do you mean Hamas was anywhere near what we were doing? We'll see. Again, waiting for more information to come out. But that's all I got for now. Of course, if interested in this or other national security subjects, be sure to check out my Substack, linked in the description below. We just brought some people on board, starting to put together more in-depth articles that I think will provide kind of some added context to the subjects I'm talking about in these videos, and they're all free. So, of course, if interested, check them out. But thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.